There. Okay. We are recording. This too will get edited.
This too. What?
Huh? Okay. Hi, I'm Wayne Bartlett.
I'm Dolan White.
He's Dolan White.
I am.
And this is the power of you.
That's right.
We're moving into a whole nother topic. We got 4 episodes in this theme, which has to do with the 4 pillars that support the foundation of leadership. Support the foundation of leadership. And it's these support things that if these aren't in place, these pillars, if they're not in place, that foundation starts to tip. Yeah. And having spent time in construction, you want a pretty solid pillar base. We live on an island up here, and the parcel that we're on, we got 11 acres here. But this, I don't think I've ever told you this.
No.
This plot area here was originally homesteaded, and goes back a whole lot of years. I mean, back
that's a long 40s, time. Yeah,
1940s. So we're looking 80, 90 years in history here. And we're on a high bank, but there's a trail that goes down to the ocean. And when I was first bought the place about 20 years ago, I walked down that trail and I found the remnants of an old cabin that was the original homesteaded cabin. No and way. What was fascinating, there's a couple of things, and this is tangential, but the guy that built the house originally, built the house that now is on the property that I've completely remodeled and redone. He pulled some old cedar tongue and groove planking out of it that lined one of the rooms in the house. But that's not the point of this story. The point of this story is that the house, that homesteaded home, had slid off the bank because it was on these little concrete footings.
Oh boy!
We're not going to stand the nature of nature here on the island, because we've got glacial sill and it's prone to sliding and that kind of stuff. So foundation, if you don't have good support pillars, the foundation, I don't care how solid that floor is, if it's not supported with something, it's going to tumble.
It is going to go. Yeah, that's true.
So
very true.
That's what we're looking at in these next 4 Power of You sessions. This is going to be number 2. We've already done number 1. We're not going to talk about that, but we're going to do this in sequence here. So today I'm going to just bring the slide set up if I can find the right button here.
We have slides?
I got slides. Hey, we are trained
professionals.
We are slides. Do not try this at home.
No, whatever you do, don't try this at home. You could lose an eye.
You could. Communication and transparency. That's what we're looking at.
What a good topic. Yeah.
And these two do go, it's kind of hand in glove here.
Gotta be. When you think about it, when we went from trust and autonomy, now communication and transparency, these are, being in Alabama, and I can say they're cousins. We won't go anywhere past that point in time, so I don't aggravate any Alabama. Yeah, kissing cousins. That's good.
Kissing cousins. Yes.
We won't do that. But yeah, I mean, this is an important topic. This is that's why this is a foundational component of executing on mindset and spirit.
Yeah, and when we start looking at these 2 words, just kind of riff a little bit here. I think it's appropriate that we define communication and define transparency, at least some broad brushstrokes. We'll get into details here.
Yeah.
But the definition that I work with, and in the work that I do with my clients around communication, I actually took this from a psychotherapist by the name of Virginia Satir, and she developed family-based therapy. She's a brilliant communicator, absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And she defined communication as being the ways, plural, the ways we work out common meaning with one another.
It's a great definition.
Has to do with the entry into mindset. Yeah, how do I interpret? What's the perception I have of what's good? That's where meaning is generated.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're talking about with meaning. So we're not going to be doing a skill
No.
conversation with you. We're going to be doing a mindset exploration around the nature of communication. And then transparency. We've got a whole way of looking at that too. But yeah, substitute the word vulnerability for transparency, and
Yep.
you begin to get a sense of what we're going to be addressing here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that's really important. And we'll get into it as we get into the slides, but I think that's really important because we're not going to teach you how to communicate. And there's lots of go look at the video on YouTube, 7 minutes long, Radical Candor. Go watch the video. You'll learn some cool stuff. There's a book out there that she wrote. It's wonderful. We're going to talk about this piece, the mindset and the heart that goes into it. So there's the challenge that we always have with leaders is people. We're just people. Just people. If there were no people involved, we wouldn't have to worry about mindset.
Yeah. So what we've got listed here are just some of the concerns that people have when they start, lifting the hood up a little bit and going, "Oh my God, that's in there." Yeah. Yeah. We can't share too much with the folks in our organization. It might cause panic, doubt, insecurity. I mean,
right.
Yeah, what's appropriate information for them? It's kind of hold it close to the vest.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. We leap to assumptions. If I tell them that, they're going to be scared.
Yeah. So manage meaning. What's the meaning dynamic that's in play here? Struggling to find the right line between transparency and oversharing.
Yeah. And it'll be fun as we get into transparency, communicating that you can feel like it's a nice to have. So I think what happens a lot of times is the act of consistent communicating with context gets lost in the priorities. I'm busy. I got stuff to do.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm just going to tell you what needs to get done. I'm going to communicate. I told them what to do.
Yeah. I told them. I cannot tell you how many times I told them.
And exactly. Sounds like some of my 5 sons. So,
exactly.
Right. Well, the other one too, I think a lot of times I love that, as we explore that a little bit is this, when people we have difficult conversations. When you're leading people, there are moments when it's going to be a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
And it could be a lot of different things, but there is a paradigm that can exist there that we end up in conversation avoidance.
Because we're afraid of conflict. And if you've been a student of the Power of You conversations that we've been holding for the last 6 weeks or so, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is, conflict is something that you want to be able to use, not avoid.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the pillars, again, this is why communication transparency becomes such a solid piece here, is it gives you a platform and it supports the foundation of having difficult conversations.
That's a great analogy
for using conflict as a means to keep yourself on track and moving forward. It doesn't stop you.
No, we want conflict.
Yeah.
We don't want fisticuffs, but we want conflict.
Yeah.
So
idea rubbing against idea.
Idea. Yeah. And the last one kind of hooks into it, but sometimes there is that moment where it's kind of like, well, I sent him an email.
Yeah.
Because we're in a digital age. And a lot of, I have found across my career in a lot of organizations, email is considered, it's almost kind of like instant messaging. Well, I sent you an email.
Yeah. And I copied you on what he or she said, as well as sent you the email. So you're fully brought in now. Yeah, you're right. You should be up to speed on it.
You must be in, because I typed it out. You have to understand all the context. I mean, how could you go wrong?
Yes, exactly. Whoops.
Yeah. Whoops.
Every organization I've consulted or coached in some way, shape, or form, the sponsor or the client I'm working with has said, "We've got a communication problem here. We'd like you to help us fix it."
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. We're unique in this. We've got unique communication difficulties.
They're all, yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Exactly. It does not matter the size. Something that makes me smile, because yes, I have a couple. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
A mom and pop is no different than one of the largest organizations on the planet. They all
have unique problems. That's right. Nobody else could be having my problems.
Nope.
No, not at all.
So this is an interesting quote.
Zeno, our friend
Zeno
Zeno, the
Axiom.
father of Stoicism, the master Stoic. But it's interesting, one of the things that I took from this, and we'll talk about the thoughtfulness of communication mindset. We're going to better to trip with the feet than with the tongue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Zeno had a way of bringing people together to do, I mean, it was called the painted porch. Yeah. It was, sit
Yeah.
on the, sit long, talk much. And it was an exercise in dialogue. Yeah. Dialogue. When you take the word dialogue apart, dialogos, around ideas. And the intent of the painted porch conversations wasn't to get to an agreement about anything. It was to explore the ideas and as a process create alignment around ideas, not necessarily agreement, but alignment that allowed for things to move.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really important part, because I think people misunderstand the difference between alignment and agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And aligning thinking and aligning to that.
Yeah.
So, and we talked about that before. As a matter of fact, in one of our previous power reviews, when we talked about decisions, it was 5 or 6 of those that we did. Anyway,
so
we embellish.
We always embellish, because we are that kind of, I mean, that's what
We're good.
That's why you're paying us the exorbitant price you're paying us to listen and watch these power review videos
Exactly.
and sessions.
Good practice.
We've got a couple of reference models that we work with every client that we work with. And Dolan and I together have got, we've got bumping 100 years, 90 plus years of experience, which is why we've got hair the color we've got. But over the course of that period of time, we've developed a couple of models that hold water, and they hold water without a whole lot of leakage. They really do.
Yeah.
The leadership universe, I'm just, quick, 3 bars on that one, because we've looked at this one before, but I want to really move us more towards the 4 pillars today. The universe, leaders operate in a universe. They will operate more specifically in a system, and the system has integrated parts to it. And to the degree that these integrated parts are communicating well and are interacting well, you've got a pretty good shot at moving yourself forward. Some of those integrated parts, and this is kind of in an abstraction, but it has to do with the vision. It has to do with the strategy. It has to do with the tactics, the things that we're doing, the resources that we're manipulating to get us where we say we'd like to go. That's the why, the what, and the how. That's where almost all leadership development conversations begin and end. Let's get some skills in place here: strategic thinking, tactical execution, all of those sorts of things. What's the vision? Let's get that set in place here, so we've got a grand flag out there that we can march with and march towards. The mindset and the spirit are where our work, I think, makes a difference, because vision gets interpreted by mindset. It gets interpreted. And if you think about this in the context of an organization, you've got, just for example, your marketing, you've got sales, you've got operations, you may have a legal administrative function or an HR function. So just say these 4. Each one of those 4 has its own vision for what it's doing departmentally or divisionally. And it's, and the mindset of that division, it's different from the mindset of the other division. Marketing's mindset is different than HR's mindset, and it's different than production's mindset. I mean, those sorts of things come into play. So when you have a vision, know that it gets interpreted to and through mindset. Now, I just gave you a very broad brush overview of what mindset could look like in an organization, but individuals have mindsets as well, around belief systems, around experiences, around preference. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. All of this stuff gets filtered before you actually get an executable vision, strategy, or tactic. When you start tapping into mindset, you start loosening things up. You start exploring ways it could be different. What if? That's where spirit comes into play, because now all of a sudden you've unleashed creativity. And creativity, intuition, all live below the level of mindset. Mindset's a cap that sits on top of spirit and soul. Creativity, innovation, all of that imagination actually gives you a doorway to move into spirit. So this is the universe now. And this is foundational. Foundation is supported by the 4 pillars, and these 4 pillars are the fundamental building blocks that everything else gets structured on top of. This whole leadership universe is built around these 4 pillars.
And we're going to dive into communication.
Horns to everything else.
There we go.
So leadership, we'll just quick.
Well, this is what I was going to say. This is important, and I'll give it back to you. But one of the things about this is when we talk about communication without a clear understanding of this definition, the languaging that we're going to, so listen carefully, the languaging that we're going to talk about from a communication won't line up. So this definition for defining leadership, what is leadership, this is a common definition that Blaine and I work with. And that it's a very, very important definition. So, Doctor?
Yeah. Influencing others. So this is state of being. So when we're looking at this through the lens of communication, as an example, and transparency as an example, this is not about the words you're using. This is about the way you are showing up. You are communicating through your beingness. This is what influence is about. What kind of movement do you cause? Because leaders cause movement. What kind of movement do you cause when you enter the room, or when somebody hears that you're coming, they start running to the wood piles? That's an influencing component.
Yes.
Co-creation, ownership transfers. This is where, again, common meaning comes into play here. And this is where transparency begins to actually be a really important piece of this whole puzzle. Co-creating. Coordinated movement. I mentioned conflict a little bit ago. Coordinated movement doesn't mean harmony. It doesn't mean kumbaya. Coordinated movement means we use effectively the inevitable conflict that comes up when we move into unknown territory. And that unknown territory is defined by a pursuit of a worthy ideal. What's worthy of us? What taps into our imagination that can't not be expressed if we let it be visible? That worthy ideal that gets us up out of bed, that it creates a sparkle in our eyes. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, it's that inspiration.
And that for the sake of what that we talk about.
Yeah, this is all of these. So again, leaning into this whole pillar of communication and transparency, this isn't your vision. This isn't goals. For the sake of what is not a 10% increase in company revenue.
For the sake of what would that be a useful thing to have?
Yeah,
it's basically it's the answer to what matters. Yeah, right. It's a worthy ideal. What matters? What do we get to have, do, or be that we wouldn't get to have, do, or be if we didn't get that 10% increase in revenue, as an example?
Right.
That's where inspiration starts. That's where personal ownership starts to come into play here, and how you communicate such that becomes visible is all we're going to be looking at here.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because these 2 slides, right? The definition of leadership. For the sake of what? Without these 2 and there's a lot that we're going to get into, but without the frameworks involved in it, there's a deer, must be a deer out there somewhere. Without these 2 frameworks in place, that's Blaine's guard dog, guards for deers. They're up there on Whidbey Island. Those deers are deadly. Got to keep an eye out for them. But without these 2 slides, the definition of leadership and clearly understanding the for the sake of what, and we're going to get into it now as we talk about communication from a mindset perspective. You're out of alignment. And when you're out of alignment, things aren't.
All bets are off.
It's Charlie Brown, baby. Want, 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 want. So
that's where we're going here.
yep. So communication. What's communication? I like this sentence because great leaders just don't deliver information; they shape understanding.
Yep.
And that when you're communicating, and as we talk about this, I want to set that as a tone and transparency. This is a mindset that says, I trust you enough to tell you the truth and share context, which means I'm willing to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to give you the background information. I'm willing to give you context, not just content. Content's important.
Yep.
But context is really, context is what we're talking about. And so both of these lean into that. If we think about that definition and for the sake of what, I'm helping you shape understanding. Shaping understanding is in alignment with the worthy ideal. It's in alignment with our mission, core values, and objectives. And transparency is that willingness to be, I'm willing to trust you, and I can trust me enough to tell you this.
Perfect. And the idea of understanding and context, these two get married because, again, communication is about the ways we work out common meaning. Context is a meaning generating mechanism. That's what context is. It generates meaning. And with meaning comes understanding, and with understanding comes meaning. It's kind of, the penny drops. That's what that means. Now I get it. The fat lady sings.
I won't take that personally in any way.
No.
We can just glance on this slide, but I want to just to connect it together. When we think of communication, generally we think of communication from the word of message. I have something to talk to you about. There's something that has to be communicated, and that is encapsulated in its simplest form as message. But we're speaking to mindset. We're not talking to a team. We're speaking directly to mindset. And with mindset, we're generating alignment or disalignment in the manner or unalignment. I don't forget.
Misalignment.
We make up words as we go along.
Yeah.
And I can get away with it because I'm old. So as we're doing that, when we think of that, it is a loop, because that alignment, when alignment is generated, it's compared back to the message, back to this content. So it's not just I'm talking to you and then I'm going to make sure we're aligned and I'm out. This is a loop that continues, and we'll get into a little bit of some more use the word context around this. Context, consistency, continuity. We'll kind of get around to that, but I want us to think about this. And when you're getting ready to craft your communication, this is just grab this screen, put it on your desk, put it there and say, what am I talking about? What am I speaking to from a mindset perspective? How do I ensure I have alignment? And we'll get into some of these techniques and symptoms of when you're out of alignment, just to give you a sneak preview. Yeah. And then confirming.
So and just to emphasize that mindset point. Kind of pick up on what you said about, I'm not talking to a team. I'm not talking to a person. I'm talking to a mind.
Right.
I know they've got ears. I know that they can hear the sounds that are coming out of my mouth. But what's the interpretive dynamic that's going on in here with them? Because all that stuff gets decoded. And it's that decoding process, it gets to be squirrely. I mean, the signal to noise ratio, if it's high, all you got is white noise. All you got is yang 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 yang. What? I see the mouth moving. The meaning is not getting generated in a way that you want it to be generated. So part of the question here has to be with, how adept are you at paying attention to how things are actually being received? If they didn't get it, it's not on them. I got to start back here. I got to come back to the source. How was this is the influence, the co-creation dynamic, Coordinated movement does not happen until co-creation is in place and until influencing is actually in alignment with that co-creative intent.
There you go. There you go. So the easiest way I think about it, when I was thinking about this plane was kind of think of the law of reciprocity. Communication's a reciprocal experience.
Mhm.
Communication's not when you think of trust is a single player game. Communication's not. Communication is not a single player game. This is one-to-one, one-to-many. But when you think about it, kind of the dynamics, you just start kind of with the first part of it. It's just trusting myself as a communicator. And we can get into some ideas and strategies and tactics around some of these things. But the very first thing is when we spoke about trust in the episode about trust that we did, I have to trust me first. I have to trust that I can communicate with clarity, that I'm okay. I can trust I can do this. And when I communicate with clarity, I can communicate with the appropriate amount of context, and I can communicate with, and I love your analogy, Blaine, about transpose the word transparency to vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
That I can communicate with vulnerability. And with transparency, by the way, we're not using the word transparent to say you got to tell them all about the numbers and the money and it is to communicate with vulnerability.
Yeah, think about it in terms of authenticity.
That's a great word. It's hard to fake authenticity.
Yeah, you can't fake authenticity.
No.
And it requires vulnerability to be authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when one of the things that I suggest to my clients all the time is when you sit is kind of this next bullet is before you communicate, don't type, don't do anything. Just take a Zen-like moment, put your feet on the floor, sit up straight, take a breath, get your pencil and ask yourself the question, what is the intention of my communication? So that I have clear intent on what I'm communicating. And I can be clear about it and I can do it in a consistent manner. So I'm not communicating here and like that and like this, because I'm going to break trust. I'm going to break autonomy. I'm going to break things doing that. So take a moment, sit down and ask yourself, what's the intention of this communication?
Yep.
I intend to tell them blah, 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 blah.
And I intend for them to experience this in this way.
Exactly. How are they going to feel at the end?
Yeah.
Which is a great question it's a great question to ask yourself. As a matter of fact, someday we'll do a whole one just on how to have a meeting, which is so we'll get into the intentions around feelings. Yeah. And then owning it. Own your message. You got to be honest. We talk about candor. I had a great conversation with a client this morning about candor. Sometimes we don't want to hear candor.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to hear it because I want you to tell me I'm not short and overweight. Don't tell me that. And tell me to put the Big Mac down.
Exactly.
Don't tell me that. But I'm looking for the benefit of one of the hallmarks of these three pieces for myself is I'm willing to have that conversation without inflicting harm. I can be candid with you. I can be honest with you. I can be direct and I can be purpose-driven without inflicting harm.
Yep.
And that's because remember, we're talking to a mind who happens to be having a physical experience. Another day we'll have spirituality conversation.
Yeah. We'll go there. We'll go those later.
Yeah, another day. Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of from for my take on the side of I have to trust myself as a communicator.
And there's another side to that channel, which is the listener.
Yeah.
Communication really only works when the listener is engaged and receptive. Now, here's what we mean by this. You're the boss. Just imagine this. You're the boss. You come in with your hair on fire. And the minute you walk in, they're knocked off balance for a couple of reasons. Number one, your hair's on fire, your voice is raised, and you got the title of the boss. So they're off balance. I'll guarantee you they will not be hearing the first 14 paragraphs out of your mouth.
No.
They're not receptive to listening.
Right.
Yeah, they're immediately, because they're off balance, they start protecting and defending, they start closing down. I mean, all of this stuff comes into play.
Yeah.
So you got to start paying attention to this and find a way to get the listener set up to listen. And it's kind of, how do you shape, the interesting question here, how do you shape their listening? How do you shape their listening so that they can hear to what it is that you're trying to deliver? Not the words, but how can they hear the meaning that you're trying to impart? So that's a skill set, and it's a component of you paying attention in a very specific way. One of which is understanding what communication really is. It's about the ways we create common meaning.
Yep.
So transparency here, understanding, seeking understanding, not just information. So when you're shaping listening, one way to think about that is, tell me what you just heard me tell you. Here's the data set I just dumped on you. Tell me what you think it means.
I love that. My favorite is when you're in a meeting and or you're having a conversation with somebody and you tell them that and they go, "Yeah, got it."
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They don't got it. They
Yeah.
don't got it.
Well, another way of thinking about that is, when you say, "Okay, everybody on board," they go, "Uh-huh, well, I guess." None of those. You can't go to the bank with any of that.
No.
I mean, honest to God, you can't. Yeah. Uh-huh. I think it's a good idea. I am not going to go to the bank with any one of those statements. I want an unqualified, vociferously enthusiastic yes.
Yeah. Yes.
And then tell me what you just said yes to.
Yeah. I think so. I think okay.
That's what we're going to be paying
All right.
attention to here.
We're going to take the hill. Let's go get that 10%. There we go.
Yeah. Which actually leads to that third point. If I'm in that position as a listener, the quality of my yes is predicated on my willingness and ability to say no to something.
Right.
So an open mindset invites that kind of clarity. Again, this is a pillar that supports the foundation. Yeah. Can I say no until I get further information? I want to know what it is that I'm signing up for, what it is that you're asking. I mean, those sorts of things come into play here. So an open mindset, is actually, critical to this process on both sides of the ledger.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Especially when you approach it and you're having that difficult conversation where you are being radically candid.
Yeah.
And so there is going to be something said, perhaps, that you didn't. If you have a closed mind, when you go into that with, "This is how it is," I have predetermined that no matter what you say, you're wrong.
Yep.
Because I am unwilling not to be right.
What happens when we actually get there?
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. So so it is communicate. We're going to talk about transparency, fear of transparency in a minute, but the intention is, I love little equations, right? Communication plus transparency is alignment. These have to go together. Communication without transparency is an alignment. Transparency without communication is an alignment. It is that opportunity for you to be open when you speak with clarity. Which there's an old saying, gosh, Blaine, and the bubble just popped. It is the percentage of time that you should spend speaking compared to the percentage of time you should spend listening. And I forget the quote and I forget all the details about it, which is talk less, listen more.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
2 ears in one mouth.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there's a multiplying, speaking of equations. So, but it is that when you're speaking with clarity, be prepared, listen with openness. When you remember, we talked about this as reciprocal. It's in the title, reciprocal communication. When you have a reciprocal mindset, two minds are connecting. You are not, remember, your mindset is connecting with a mindset. when that is going on, if you're not open, if you're closed and they're talking to you and you give them that physical indicator that says, teach me something,
Mm-hmm.
you are not aligned. You got to be careful with also too. One of the things I think we're in a hurry, and when we're in a hurry, we create assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
We play chess. I'm going to say this, they're going to say that. Remember, I think it's kind of like in high school. Okay, I'm gonna tell her she's cute, and then she's gonna. No, it doesn't. Probably a bad analogy, but high school was a long time ago. For you people, high school was anyway. We had lights and no electricity and no running water and dinosaurs.
We parked our dinosaurs outside.
We did, exactly. But when you think about it, you want to make sure, and you're going to have assumptions. You cannot eliminate assumptions, but because it's part of the nature of who we are as humans, part of the nature of the baggage we bring to the conversation, our life experiences, our career experiences. But you want to reduce those assumptions. And when you do that, your intention is you want to move forward, key words with a shared purpose.
Yeah.
Alignment really is shared purpose. So you are doing that. And that's just not just career, this is life as well, right? And it's not just about talking, it's about creating connection. It's not the want. But I love that reminder of the 2 ears, 1 mouth, right?
Yeah.
It's like, take a breath.
Take a breath. Yeah. Yeah. That shared connect or that shared purpose is actually, I mean, how do you know you have shared purpose? When you've got connection and commitment. That's one way you know it. It's just, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, connection and commitment, not necessarily complete agreement, but connection and commitment. It's kind of like, okay, I see the value in this. I see. Now we'll get to we'll get to the nitty gritty about how we do this, but I see the value in it. I'm committed to this. We will make this happen. And I'm in it with you. We've got a shared purpose now.
Exactly.
Which moves us into that whole mindset conversation, which is a shift from a leadership perspective, from paying attention to and organizing around, well, I told them, I said it, I gave them the data, I gave them the information, to a question that I continuously want to ask myself, did it land? Did the message land? And how did it land? Yeah. Did it throw them for a loop? Now I got to go back and clean up after myself.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a waste of time and money and resources. But how did it land? If I'm starting to pay attention to how people feel about themselves when they're in my presence and in the throes of our communication process, I start recalibrating just a little bit here. And this is where transparency comes into play again here. Yeah. Right. You start to teach the team how to be open. Declaratively open, transparent, vulnerable, so that the team can actually begin to assume the role of a self-cleaning oven.
Oh, good analogy.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want waste to build up. You don't want stuff to start stacking and building up, and then there's an explosion or the heat doesn't actually do what it's supposed to. I mean, all that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So it starts with you as the leader first. And then it's an invitation, literally an invitation. Co-creation is an invitation. It's not a command and control sort of a thing. Co-creation, you invite and develop participation in others. Tell me how you want to participate in this. Here's where we need to go. You're close to the ground on this. You got a view on the inner workings of this that I don't have. Tell me how best that we can go about approaching this.
Yeah, I love that, because I think a lot of times there's not that, not to build a hierarchical model in somebody's mind where we go, okay, data, it starts here and then it flows down, trickles down through the organization. But that hierarchy of communication and the manner in which you communicate doesn't flow. And it flows not only, it has to flow this way, and that way.
Yep.
And that's an important part in that mindset.
So if you're screwing it up, Oh, we've got communication problems in this organization. Well, how do you know that?
Yeah.
Well, what are the symptoms? We got yeah. Now yeah, I spent a lot of time in the medical field doing work with hospital systems,
Sure.
medical teams, the executive teams, and but I'm also on the teaching faculty of the American Association for Physician Leadership. And I'm mentioning all of that because in that medical domain, in that medical sector, in that medical profession, what's presented? Well, it's the symptoms that are presented. How did the patient present? Well, they had a rash. They had, and then we've got to diagnose what's the cause. When I hear somebody in an organization say we got poor communication, what they're doing is they're focusing almost exclusively on help me get rid of the symptom. I just want a symptomatic fix, not necessarily a deep dive into what's the organic cause of what we're dealing with right now.
I checked on WebMD.
Yes, that this was what it was.
Oh, I know what I have. I know. Anyway, but no, it is. I'm glad you mentioned it because it is that when you think that, and you guys can read the slides without us reading them all to you. But when you think about it, there are tells. Play poker.
Tells. Yeah.
There's tells. There's tells in your organization that this is rooted in a communication. It's rooted there, which connect again the 4 pillars: connection to trust and autonomy, and all the other pillars as we go through. But when you think of lack of follow through, things aren't being done. What was said was not received. It's funny. I had a great interview today with a gentleman for Podcast Blame, and we were talking, and he said something in passing, a little mic drop moment, which was strategy is a wonderful thing, but unless communicated properly, it's never executed on.
Right.
And I kind of went, thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
I love the passive aggressive one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a water cooler, sniping that goes on. Well, that was the stupidest idea I ever heard them come up with. Oh, you had an example of this when we were meeting.
Yeah. We went to go meet Mr. Meltzer. Yeah. Without calling out David Meltzer by name. Check him out, David Meltzer. But we were there and I was sitting in the quad in a chair, just beautiful summer morning or spring morning in Southern California. And this gentleman was walking by me and he was stopped about 6 feet away from me, had his phone to his ear, and he goes, yeah, this is another effing earth-shattering idea, and this is like his last idea that was going to change the world and blah, 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 blah. And, this is going to, I got other things to do. This is going to pass. And I thought, wow, this is how we're speaking out here.
Mm-hmm.
This is the aggressive you. And then when you get into the office, I highly doubt that aggressive you is carried into the office. So now we have the passive aggressive you.
Yeah.
That's there. This too shall pass. And that's a symptom. You missed the worthy ideal. You missed the creating. You missed the for the sake of what? You missed all of that. I know you're a man in demand. And
I thought I had it turned off. Keep going.
Yeah, keep going. And blame or defensiveness, right? You want, it's this. When communication doesn't happen right, it's that finger pointing moment. Outcomes fall short. People default to finger pointing. And we see that. It's the political nature of the beast.
Yep.
Somebody has to win. Somebody has to lose when communication is right or wrong, I should say.
Yeah.
This occurs, to use the Disney pointing method. And then missed expectations. Again, things fall off target. It's not lack of following through, but there's that 1% drift, and we miss Mars.
Yep. Yeah. And it is what we're talking about here, and this is one of the major downsides of ineffective communication, is that it encourages drift. And I mean literally encourages drift away from, because nobody's really minding the store. And we encourage behavior that is antithetical to what we say we want to have going on, the direction that we want to be moving. And that we're 1 degree off course here. Somebody didn't voice something that could have been useful in this meeting, and as a consequence, it didn't get acted on or considered effectively. So now we're about a degree and a half off course, and it continues to stack. That's how we miss expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. And over 1 million miles, you got big miss. Got big miss.
Big misses.
So this was the reason, this one, I just quickly for this one, I think one of the things that leaders, when I say people, the mindset has a challenge with is that vulnerability. And we talk about this early on, kind of when we talk about the 5 lies. Some of these things kind of relate back into the 5 lies. But one of the things I wanted to kind of deal with is, so how do you shift your mindset, you as the leader, and how do you reframe it, right? Remembering that when you think about transparency, think about vulnerability as a strength. It's a shared opportunity to ask a question. And if you're watching this or listening to this, one of the things I would encourage you to do is close your eyes for a moment and hear me say, hey, I could really use your help because I don't understand this.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel when I asked you that question? You felt open. You kind of went, well, okay. I could what do you need?
Yeah. Let me consider that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm willing to hear it out. I may not be the right person, but I'm willing to be it. So reframe transparency and vulnerability. It doesn't mean claim or feign ignorance but be willing to be vulnerable.
Yep.
And you talk about this one, Blaine. This is one that literally stole this analogy from you. The next one about building muscles.
Yes. Yeah, it is. That's what you're doing. It's something that we all can do, and we have in fact done in our history. But a lot of times that, particularly in an organizational system where politics are in play and all kinds of other stuff, that muscle does not get used and it starts to atrophy. And that's what we're doing here, is saying, build that muscle back up. We all have experiences of being open, direct, vulnerable, and transparent. We all have that experience in our life. And if you have it in one domain, you can actually port it over to another domain and actually learn how to use it well in that new domain. That's what we're looking at here. And you don't do it all at once.
Oh, no.
I mean, we were joking the other day. I mean, I had some minor surgery not too long ago, and I've been restricted in terms of my exercise regime. And so I've been given the go ahead to start, doing some resistance training again, lifting some weights. And Dolan said, "Oh, yeah, back to the 450 pounder, huh?" Going, yeah, okay, yep. I'm not going to do that.
No,
we're going to start with a 10-pound dumbbell.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But you start small, build muscle. That's what you do. This is a journey. And in any organization, there's stuff that starts to, build up, crust over, all kinds of stuff. You don't just blow it up and think that you're going to have a frame that you can actually work with, because now you got people running all over the place. They're not, you want to start small. Yeah. Build the muscle of change, build the muscle of conversation, build the muscle of transparency. Yeah. That's what we're looking at doing here.
Yeah, that's really important. Otherwise, you're going to blow trust. It'll blow up right in your face. The other two we can go pretty quickly, but the other one is, because we've touched on these, right? Remember Blaine talked about dialogue, right? And the meaning of that word, dialogue. It's the sharing of ideas. It's that reciprocal conversation, not just telling them. Transparency is safer when it's a conversation. It goes back to, you can't fake authenticity. It's got to be a conversation. You got to ask for input. You got to discover how it lands. And last but not least, this goes back to the definition of leadership, anchor it in purpose and values. The last key word is with mission, values, and worthy ideal. And and it's your responsibility. You own that. As the leader, you own that. You lead that conversation.
Spot on.
You got it. You just anyway. There we go.
You got to take a stand there.
Yep, that's your stand.
Yeah. Speaking of stands, what's your next step?
Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, that was That was
Speaking of communicating,
boy. Now, what you had was a monologue coming at you. We did not obviously necessarily have any kind of a dialogue going back and forth here, but we want to invite a way for you to have a dialogue with us. And it's for the sake of what? So that you can actually become more effective at leading in your life. But also, if you've got an organization that you're responsible for, whether it's a team or an organization, how do you scale that puppy? How do you actually begin to build it? Scaling it's an enormously complex question to answer. How do I scale my business? How do I scale it? How do I move it from 6 figures to 7, from 7 to 8? Because there's head counts, there's onboarding, there's people. I mean, what's the scaling component? All of which have leadership components built into them. And if you've watched the previous Power of You programs, we always will come down to this slide. Nothing happens until something moves. Yeah, you have to move your feet. You have to move your feet.
Yeah.
And leaders cause movement. Leaders take action. They invite that in their people. But what studies show is that only 20 to 30% of people that begin a developmental process actually follow through with it, because they don't have the kind of support that they need to actually create a habituated shift, because they run into an existing mindset, and that existing mindset has teeth. It does not want to be changed. It's worked for me for the last 40 years. Why should I change this? This is just the way I am, damn it. I mean, all of that stuff comes up. They will never go along with it. That's all mindset chatter. You have to have a peer group, somebody that is a support group that can help you facilitate the conversation internally in a way that translates to an external behavior shift that you can hold until it becomes habituated, part of who you are now. So how do you go about doing that? We've got a mastermind program that is designed specifically to develop leadership competence in service of, for the sake of, scaling more effectively what it is that you're up to, either as a team or as an organization. That's what we're looking at here. It's a comprehensive curriculum, real-time group engagement, access to a private community, mastermind that goes beyond skill training. It's all, this mastermind completely, that's in the title, completely deals with mindset. Completely deals with mindset. And the one thing that's not mentioned on this is that Dolan and I personally facilitate this live every week for a year. It's a year-long program, 52 weeks. And we facilitate that live session every week. And then there are breakout mastermind groups that kind of accompany that. But you get us on a Q&A basis. You get us on a teaching basis for 52 weeks. And that's very specifically intended to shift mindset, to uncover, explore, and shift it where it needs to be shifted. So that's the invitation. That's the next step. The way that you can begin to do something with that is to have a chat with us. There's a notion that's both Dolan and I kind of laugh at and play with a little bit, called a Pheno invitation. Feel invited, not obligated. So we're going to invite you literally to have a chat with us. We do 2 of these masterminds a year, and the upcoming one has got a wait list for it. So we encourage you to go to the landing page, and that landing page actually shows up like this.
Boom.
Boom. And the QR code up at the upper right-hand side there will take you also to the landing page. So if you're watching this and you've got a mobile phone handy, just scan that QR code and you'll be dropped right onto the landing page. On the landing page, there's a call to action button on there that's a wait list thing. So all it's doing is saying, if you want to have a conversation with us, I want to put myself on the wait list. You give us your phone number and email address. We'll get a hold of you, and we'll let you know what it is, see if you're a fit, see if we're a fit, and that's about it.
Perfect.
Bada bing, bada bang.
Boom. All right. Communication Communication, baby.
Communication. You got it, master.
All right. Well, I hope everybody found value in this conversation. So, Dr.
Thank you
Bartlett?
for watching and listening, guys. And we will catch you on the next go around. We got 2 more of these to do.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. If you're getting value, make sure every Thursday at noon, we'll be right here on this channel.
There you go. Until then,
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.